Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I'm just going to hold off just a couple of seconds to allow everyone to join. Okay, hi everyone and welcome. I'm just going to share my screen very quickly. Stephen, give me a thumbs up that you can see the screen. Yeah, thank you. Fantastic. Awesome. All right, let's get started. Hi everyone and welcome to today's session. I'm Natasha Leahy from Archify, and I'm really excited to have you with us today as we explore a powerful new update to the ArchifySpec platform, our brand new Revit plugin. If managing schedules, annotations, and specifications across multiple tools has ever slowed your team down, or if keeping your BIM models aligned with documentation feels like a constant challenge, then this session is exactly what you need. We've got a fantastic lineup today. First, I'm going to hand over to Stephen, who'll set the scene on the role that coordinated documentation plays across design, tendering, and delivery, and why digital transformation is such a game changer. Then we'll move over into a live demo and discussion with Dia Ayu, our product manager at Hebexo, who has led the development of this integration here in Australia. You'll get a front row look at how it works and how it can slot into your current Revit workflows. With that, Stephen, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, Tash.
No worries.
Just share my screen. And then likewise, if you could give me a thumbs up when you can see it. All good?
All good. Great.
Yeah, so hi everybody. My name is Stephen Hamill from NBS in the UK. That's part of the Hebexo group. In terms of my background, I originally studied engineering at Durham University in the United Kingdom, did a PhD on digital modeling of structures. I've worked on the NBS products for over 25 years now, part of the original team at Newcastle University that developed the SpecMan product and digitized many of our sort of paper-based solutions and took them eventually onto the web. Outside of NBS, I've worked on projects for UK government. I led the plan of work and classification streams for level 2 BIM, and also chaired the specification stream for the Golden Thread initiative that ultimately led to the building regs in the UK getting amended through the Building Safety Act. And now I'm director at Hebexo, focusing on strategy and roadmap for the specification and product information businesses globally, part of the Hebexo group. So I just want to start with one slide. This actually comes from a full sort of CPD on specification, but just to summarize it in one slide, why is specification important? And I guess primarily it's a sort of concise definition of the work that will get tendered, and then will form that sort of baseline for the work to get checked and verified as it is completed on site. And not just the actual quality of the products, but the quality of the execution and things like the handover material. It's there for support for your drawings, so you're not trying to get all of the text on every single drawing, or you've just got little Word documents scattered around. It's there to really help the cost consultant. So you've got the cost consultant that's going to be putting together the budget, cost plan, pre-tender estimates, and the specification defines the quality. And if you think what goes into the price of the job, it's the quality of the job plus the quantities that really influence the price. It minimizes the risk of things going wrong if you document things correctly, and it's one of the best ways to demonstrate compliance with the sort of building regs, is what we call them in the UK, or the construction code. You've got the specification and the drawings, and that's the way that you can show that the design complies. It's clear instructions to build from, sort of the instructions manual of how you build the building, part of the contracts documents, so it's legally binding. And I guess it's that sort of assurance of client satisfaction. So when the building's happening, the client knows the quality they're going to get. And at the end of the job, it should be a great resource for the facility management team, so it documents what's in the building. And also, ultimately, at the end, saves you time and money. You invest in specification, you do it right, it saves you time and money on a job. If it's done incorrectly, what are the sort of things that can go wrong? Things like the project going to dispute, but in the worst case, if you look at examples both in Australia and the UK, there's been some sort of real sort of bad case studies of things that have gone wrong on projects. If you look at the Docklands cladding fire in Australia, a bad specification of plastic flammable insulation, details on fire stopping that either weren't correct or weren't followed, and then unscrupulous substitution of materials. It's not just fire, it's structural safety as well. In Australia, the Opal Tower sort of disaster of a project, concrete reinforcement, quality of the spec, delivering to the spec, test results. And then in the UK, we had the absolute disaster of the Grenfell Tower, which led to the Building Safety Act in the United Kingdom. Big parallels with the Docklands, again, badly specified cladding, in particular the insulation, poor fire stopping, and then unscrupulous substitutions, changes not being recorded through the project. And then again, big parallel with Australia on the sort of Scottish schools, where the details of the masonry wall, incorrect. Wall actually fell down on a school. Fortunately, no children around at the time. It was the weekend. But then they went back, and that problem had gone on like a whole framework of 17 schools that all need major changes. So they're the worst cases. But if you go across the world, there's lots and lots of projects that go to dispute, lots of arguments, and the specification can go a big way to sort of getting things right so that these problems don't happen. This lady here, Dame Judith Hackett, led the response to the Grenfell fire disaster in the United Kingdom. She spoke at our conferences in the UK, and just a little quote there. Like, changes including substitutions can be made, but they must be properly considered, documented. They mustn't compromise the integrity of the building. And once you've got your specification right, any changes to the specification must be recorded. We've got a series of articles coming out in Australia, ArchifySpec team, working with some leading organisations like Landers and Rogers, Tilt Industrial Design, and Alivo Architects, looking at things like risk, liability, project delivery, best practice specification. And we've got this quote here from Landers and Rogers: in disputes, responsibility often falls back on the design team, especially where documentation is unclear or services fall outside the formal agreements, the sort of design responsibilities. And by the time a dispute lands, the damage is usually done. It's rarely about one big mistake. It's a series of small oversights that snowball, vague documentation. That's what we're going to look at today: specification, schedules, drawings, informal decisions, poor record keeping, and that's the recipe for litigation. And that's what nobody wants to see. In terms of the information developing through the timeline, there's a little phrase in the UK that developed after Grenfell called the golden thread. And a big part of that golden thread is the specification decision making. This is a free download. You can Google it and download it, but it's from the Construction Leadership Council in the United Kingdom that sits between industry and government. And throughout its specifications mentioned. And if you think of that sort of timeline, initially drawings and specifications must show compliance of the design with the relevant technical requirements of the construction code. So it shows that your building is sort of hits that baseline, it's good enough with the building code. And then secondly, the coordination of the different designers. So the building plans and specifications from different designers should come together, consider those key elements like an entire wall, an entire roof, and show how they integrate to deliver a compliant system. And then finally here about changes, just like Dame Judith Hackett was mentioning. All control changes must be recorded in the change control log, and the relevant documents should be updated. So big part of the golden thread, getting specifications right, and then documenting any changes as you go through that project. Another download from NBS here in the UK, but I think we're going to do a version of this for Australia. Already working on one for North America as well. But it's a free download best practice guide to specification writing. And it's designed for architects and engineers, just to have that discussion internally, maybe amend the document a little bit so it works for them to standardize an approach across their practice, or more in your sort of design and construct projects for the design manager working for that main contractor to say, let's have a standardized approach to a specification across the entire project team. Could be the same for a client that's doing lots of hotels or lots of schools, sort of similar projects from professional clients or government departments. And also just for universities as well, when teaching architects and engineers how to do things properly, it's a nice guide for education as well. And there's 10 different chapters inside there, but one chapter is dedicated to how do you coordinate your project information. So how do you reference specifications from the drawings you produce? So you've got sort of standard policy on how you do annotations, just to keep the text on the drawings to the minimum, and make sure you say things once and in the right place. Coordinate the schedules that you maybe do in your specification platform in terms of the types that go into a building, but also the instance schedules, and even things like database exports from your 3D models. So a whole chapter dedicated to that, but that's the topic of the webinar today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and introduce my colleague, Ayu. Hi, Ayu. How are you doing this morning?
Hi, Stephen. Thank you. Good yourself?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. It's nice to be able to work on the other side of the world to each other and just do a session like this. But this section here, Ayu is going to do a bit of a sort of demonstration of ArchifySpec and the ArchifySpec plugin in Revit. But rather than just a sort of big demonstration, we're going to just sort of have a discussion as we go. So I was hoping, Ayu, that we could start off by, I know you've prepared a specification for the demonstration, but before we jump into Revit and show the plugin, just show me that specification in ArchifySpec and talk us through the content you're going to demonstrate.
Okay. So probably it's a good opportunity as well to show everyone an overview of ArchifySpec. And this is one of the projects that I have created through ArchifySpec. And if we talk about project configuration, it started with the setup of the project, whereas we will need to complete the project details and then set up additional information, as well as inviting the project members that would be contributing towards the project or probably review the project as well. And here in this step, we could also set up different set of permission in order to contribute towards the project. And then finally, after we set up the project, we went into the next step of starting to create specification and schedule. And to do so, we could start it from scratch, or we could select from predefined template as well. So it's really dependent on which scenario that we want to implement across as well. And here in this step, what we could do is for each one of the schedule, we could also select what are the relevant trade section as well as the relevant product types as well. And this would be one of the integration point between schedule, specification, as well as the Revit model that we will be showing shortly as well. But just to give an overview for the overall workflow, after we define the trade section and relevant product types as well, the next step is when we actually build up the schedule. And in this step, this is where we actually nominate products. So a couple of ways to do so. We could either search from Archify product library, for example, and what it will do, say, For instance, if we click on one of the product from Archify, it will fetch through the specification live from Archify product database. So yeah, it will make product nominations way easier as well. And then we could also add from product template, because within ArchifySpec, as a specifier, we could also manage our own product template. And then lastly, to add, of course, custom product and save it as template if necessary. After the schedule, of course, it's the specification writing processes, but it will be automatically fetching the data of the content based on the schedule or the section that we selected. So this one, in my understanding, is always updated on a regular basis. I think it's at least every 6 months. So it will be gathering the specification, the predefined specification content here in the first section and also the third section of execution. But if we have a look closer on the second section, which outlines the material and component, we could also see the nominated product type as well as the drawing code that will be integrated as well into our Revit model, as well as the additional text to say that, okay, this would refer to a particular schedule, for instance. And just to quickly show you as well how it's gonna look like on our published documents, this is just one example of our specification document in PDF. And yeah, it contains this table of contents, and then it's gonna be showing the content that we set up through the platform. And this one is an example of our schedule, whereas it's actually completely customizable as well. But in regards to the default information that we provide, it's looking like this. And in terms of the integration point towards our Revit model, it will be including 4 different data points, starting with the section code, section title, product code, or drawing code, as well as the product type. So yeah, that's a bit of an overview in regards to ArchifySpec.
Nice. And I've just had a little message off Tash there, our chairperson for the day, to say that as we're doing the presentation here, if anybody does have any questions that sort of watching the presentation today, please pop them into the chat and we'll try to answer as many as possible on the webinar. And the ones we can't answer on the webinar, we'll get back to people one-to-one. But yeah, I've got the pleasure of asking the questions first. And I think what I really like there, is the fact that you've got one database in the cloud with multiple people with permissions accessing, but the schedules view and the spec view comes off the same data. So if you change something in the schedule, it changes in the spec, and vice versa. And I guess there's people today that are very familiar with Revit. I guess ArchifySpec deals, because it's a specification, with the type of things. So you might have 100 doors in your design, but ArchifySpec will have 2 or 3 different types. Could you maybe show yeah, you got it on the screen there, the different types of door?
Yeah. So it's the same product type, which is door, shutter, and hatches. But if we have a look at the code, it specifies differently, and it's being identified under different codes as well. Say, for example, I have this DI301, which is contractor choice, and DI302, which should be coming from a specific manufacturer, for example. So yeah, it's actually defining per type basis as opposed to Revit, who's dealing on an instance basis.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess the big question now is, how do you connect these items in the specification database with the items that are in Revit? And yeah,
Okay.
let's see that out.
All right. So here I have my Revit open. This is Revit 2025, and we also support the latest Revit, which is Revit 2026. And just to give context, the latest version that we support is actually Revit 2023. But once we have the Revit plugin installed for ArchifySpec, we could have this additional side panel, and this would be the first integration point. So if we went inside the same project that I just showed on the ArchifySpec full web version, we could see the list of specification. And if we click on the specification, it will prompt us to associate that particular specification with a Revit model, and we could do multiple associations as well. So say, for example, I also want to associate this structural specification. Because it's still within the same project, then we could still do that. And if we have a look at the project information here in the Revit model, we could see additional parameters coming from ArchifySpec, which specify what's the project ID and what's the project name. So that's sort of the first step of the integration. But then going deeper into the specification, we could see the breakdown of information coming from the schedule that we define in ArchifySpec, which is product type schedule. So say, for example, we want to associate this particular wall element into a section of cladding. So that's doable. And then if we have a look at the properties, here on this wall, it's going to be showing additional properties coming from ArchifySpec, which all starts with ArchifySpec. So it gives a nice grouping of information as well. But in regards to the information that we integrate with, it is showing the schedule information, what's the section code and section title as well. We could also additionally associate into product type level, and the difference between associating into section and product type is for product type, we could actually associate on a material level as well. So say, for example, I'm going to associate a bricks that is used to build up this particular wall. I could do that, and if I click on the material, it's going to be showing me the breakdown of the material of that wall as well. So if I click on associate, it will provide the same kind of association as well. Now let me just do that for some more elements.
Nice. So you've got the option here of linking with the entire Revit system family type or the materials inside it. And you've got
Yes.
their brick installation blocks.
Correct. And we could also associate the same product types into different codes. So say, for example, this door, I would like to associate with this type of door, but it's DI 301. So if I do that and click on associate, because the association is happening on a type level, because this door and this door is actually the same door type, it will give me the same properties as well. So if we talk about the association on an element level, it's not on an instance basis, but it's on a type basis where we don't have to associate one by one per instance, but it's doing association on a type basis. So
And I guess
I'll
I'll let you just do the second door there, and then I'll ask the question. So you've got the double door there, that's 302, yes. And the single door I think was 301. And I guess people out there at the moment will either be putting text notes on or maybe using Revit keynoting. Well, what's the advantage of this way of working as opposed to just using your traditional keynoting or annotations in Revit?
So on this annotation functionality, we support through Revit family annotation file as opposed to Keynote. And we do that because Keynote is essentially a static file, and it's not reflecting any updates that we did in the specification or schedule from ArchifySpec document. And therefore, in order to facilitate live updates, we actually provide annotations through the Revit family annotation file as opposed to regular Keynote file.
Yeah, it's coming off that live database, isn't it, as opposed to just a snapshot export to a text file. And I can see bottom right, we're getting some annotations come through. So that was going to be my next question. How do you use the information that's been shared to better annotate your drawings or do your instance schedules? Come on, talk me through what's happened there.
Yeah, so because we're using Revit family annotation file, we have provided this menu on top, which is to load the file itself. And at the moment, we support two kinds of tagging, which is material tag and multi-category tag. So let me just reload that to make sure that it contains the latest one. All good. So once the file has been loaded, if I go to the annotate menu and click on multi-category and hover around the model, it will give me this information coming from the association that I just did, and that's on element level. But I could also annotate on a material level. So if I click on annotation, hit material tag, It's essentially the same steps, so I just need to hover around the model and tag it one by one, be it a material or be it an element as well.
Yeah, very good. And I guess different practices out there might have different styles for their annotations. Can you change the information in the annotation to appear in different places or hide it away? How do you customize it?
Yeah, because we provide a predefined templates in a form of Revit family annotation file. We could always customize that at any moment. So at this stage, what we provided as a default tagging format is the section code, section name, and then drawing code, and then product type name. But that's something that we could adjust through the Revit family annotation file that we provide here. So yeah, it's customizable essentially.
Yeah. So if I just wanted to keep it really light and have DI, I presume internal door 301, you could hide away the other fields and just show that one parameter. So the flexibility is there for the user. And those are fields you can also use in your Revit schedules as well.
Yes. So this is the example of a door schedule, whereas it has been modified so that it includes as well the parameters coming from ArchifySpec, and it's the same information as well. So if we see here, it has the consistent product code, for instance, whereas it's DI301, DI302. It's the same on the Revit schedule as well as the annotations that we have and in our specification and schedule within ArchifySpec as well.
Yeah, and I can see you're using the power of Revit there as well, also to show which doors the rooms are in and the sort of dimensions as well. Yeah, do you want to just say a little bit between when you'd do a schedule in ArchifySpec and when you do a schedule in Revit? What are the sort of subtle differences between the two?
So if we're talking about Revit schedule, it's really on an instance level. So I have three instances of doors. So it is showing 3 rows on the schedule, whereas it's also specify the dimension as well and probably its location. But if we talk about the Revit schedule, for example, it's really on the type level. So I only have 301, 302, and potentially 303 type of door. And I could expand and see the detailed specification towards that product type as well. So that's sort of the main differences between the schedule. But it complements.
And I know we've got a simple model on the screen, but if this was a complex project, you could have 10 different types of door with the nice images in Archify. And then in Revit, you maybe have 300 instances showing every door in every room and the different dimensions and coordinating the code there, the DI302. That's that sort of touch point. Now what happens if the specifier changes some of the codes or changes the spec? How do you sort of minimize the risk of everything going out of sync?
Yeah, so let's try to do that. Because we have the I301 and 302 being connected to our Revit model now, if we adjust the code into the IA, for example, and then this one into the IB, for example,
And everything's wrong now, isn't it?
Yeah, because at the minute we have the I301 and 302 in the Revit model, but we have the IA and the IB type of door. So what it is, I'm just gonna show you both sides, which is the annotation and the Revit schedule as well. If we have a look at our plugin, if we run into issues, it is now going to show us warnings for a particular element. It's gonna show parameters don't match because we have different set of information within the ArchifySpec schedule and the Revit model. So what we can do to resolve that is to click on this, which will essentially update everything. Yeah, so it will update everything in the Revit model, including Revit schedule, and then the annotations here as well. Now it will sync across the data.
Yeah, very nice. And again, it's a very simple example we're showing today. If this was a complex project with 4 or 5 schedules in Revit, material takeoffs, 2 or 3 drawings, being able to synchronize all of that, it's a real game changer. Like if I go back 25 years when I started, this was done on a drawing board and a typewriter. And if you change something on the typewriter, you'd have to go through every single drawing, and that's just really good to see. I don't know, maybe Tasha, is it worth bringing yourself back in at this point? Has there been any questions from
a couple of questions? Yes, I think someone has just sent through one, but I think this has just been answered, but I'll ask it just to double check. When an element is associated with the product in ArchifySpec, is there any notification if the element is changed in Revit to highlight a potential coordination issue with the specification?
So for any new association, we're not going to send any notification, but for the associated ones, if there's any changes, then we're going to send a cross notification.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. Gilberto has asked, is all the data of the items and materials set in the Revit program when I get it for the first time?
Come again, sorry, what would be the question?
I think I understand it. Is all of the data of the items and materials set in the Revit program when I get it for the first time? So I think what Gilberto is asking is all of the product data that you had in ArchifySpec, will that data be available to users? I think if you go back to ArchifySpec and do a little bit of a rerun, if I'm adding a product to my schedule, what are the options of being able to do that?
Okay. So you mean to nominate products here in ArchifySpec schedule?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just add one product, for example. So once we have nominated the product, that doesn't mean that we send everything across to be saved on the Revit model database, because essentially what we connected is limited only to a couple of data points, which is the section name, section title, product code, and then lastly drawing code. So by that should have been provide an integration point between documents as well, but we don't copy information across to different databases.
I just summarize. I think just maybe one or two questions. I think we can summarize in one little discussion. But when you install the ArchifySpec plugin, you get the annotation families installed as well, so you can get the preset annotations out of the box. And then when you make the association between ArchifySpec and the Revit object, it only adds 4 or 5 additional properties. So it doesn't change the objects in terms of what's already in there. It just adds 4 or 5 parameters. And that's true whether it's an object they've downloaded from a manufacturer or whether it's an object they've created themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Stephen. We have Manny who has asked if they're able to use their own codes. Obviously, you did have quite a number of codes noted there. What can a practice do when they have their own?
So this is not something that we predefined. Actually, we're talking about code, so it's completely customizable as well.
Right.
And yeah, we could just set it up through the schedule creation functionality. So we could have, as what I just did, edit the code as we please as well, and then it's going to be connected across to the Revit model. But the information itself, it's a customizable information.
Great. A couple of questions have come through actually from Mark, and then also Jack, you asked the same. Are there plans to adapt for other CAD programs such as ArchiCAD?
Yeah, it's definitely on the pipeline, but at the minute, because most of the architects are using Revit as the BIM modeling software, then we prioritize Revit at this stage.
I might add a comment there. Obviously, ArchifySpec is a platform that's very new to the market, and a lot of practices are now revolutionizing the way that they're working. And I think what's really important is for us with the Revit integration to get as much feedback as possible. We obviously want this to work with multiple systems, but users of the platform are going to be able to drive those changes as well. So thanks for those questions, guys. We have a couple of more. I'm just going to quickly go, sorry. This is a good question. Can Revit push information back to ArchifySpec or only pull information from ArchifySpec?
At the minute, it only pulls information from ArchifySpec. So that when there's any data discrepancy, for example, on code that is being updated, when we click on that update button previously, it's actually getting the data from ArchifySpec as opposed to replacing the data in ArchifySpec from Revit. So it's just one-way integration from ArchifySpec into the Revit application.
Fantastic. We have a question from an existing ArchifySpec user, practice, sorry. So they've asked that they have a BIM team that don't necessarily need to access the schedule, but they do need to access the schedule through the plugin. And are there different types of licenses that ArchifySpec provide for that purpose?
Yeah. So in terms of user permission, which is being set up here on the first step on the project setup, we could define for each of the team members what would be the permission level. If we're talking editor and viewer, they have full access towards the schedule and the specification in ArchifySpec full web version. But if we define a particular user as BIM spec editor, which what we just add specifically for the Revit plugin purposes, they would only be able to access the schedule information through the Revit plugin. So they won't have access to edit the specification or schedule here in ArchifySpec full web version.
That might be all the questions that we can answer online. Stephen, was there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I think that finishes that section. Big thank you to IU for such a fantastic demonstration too as well, because this isn't pre-recorded, this is completely live as well. So yeah, top stuff, IU.
I'm gonna stop sharing now and hand it over to you, Tash.
Great. Guys, I'm just going to essentially wrap it up here. I definitely want to say a big thank you to both Stephen and yourself, IU, for showing our audience about this new Revit plugin. I think what's really important, this is really the first opportunity that we've been able to come together as a company, NBS from the UK and ArchifySpec, to bring a solution that's really going to be able to change workflow. So Stephen, I understand it's very early in the morning, so it's much appreciated. While I have everyone here, I did want to make mention, sorry, hopefully this is going to work for me, for all of our Melbourne architects who have attended, Dr. Stephen Hamill himself will be flying out here on the 4th of June and will also be accompanied by Dr. Lee Jones. This event is dedicated to present 2 CPDs to the audience that will cover sustainability and then specification, and we'll also be joined by a couple of our top practices as well. There will be coffee and breakfast provided, so I do encourage you to register for the event. It is free, however, seats are limited. Sort of actions off the back of this, if you're interested in understanding and exploring how ArchifySpec could work for your practice, but also on topic for today on how the integration can support you moving forward. We do understand that all practices currently work quite differently to each other. So we can actually meet with IU and a product specialist at ArchifySpec to really understand what it would look like to use the integration in practice. So with that, I'm going to leave everyone. So thank you guys for joining. And if not seeing you online, we'll definitely look forward to seeing you face to face. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.